A lot of people incarcerated that definitely talk to their friends and talk to me to tell me my friend from jail is, watching you play and watching everything that's going on. So it's just like the world, I say is so small and everybody.
From the very first snap, it was clear that this wasn't going to be an ordinary preseason game. Sunday football suddenly felt different, as if the spotlight had shifted, and the entire broadcast had been redesigned around one player. The moment Shadur Sanders took the field for the Cleveland Browns, the energy in the stadium and in living rooms across the country jumped several notches. It wasn't just a rookie debut, it felt like the launch of a new era. Cameras tracked his every movement, crowd noise surged with each step, and even those who tuned in casually found themselves leaning forward in anticipation. The Browns, for years, had struggled to make themselves relevant beyond their die-hard base. But in those opening minutes, Sanders made the team feel like a national headliner. His first series showcased a quarterback who played with the confidence of a seasoned veteran, delivering the ball with sharp precision and displaying a calmness that made the pressure seem non-existent. Even when the Panthers' defense closed in, he stayed poised in the pocket, scanning the field and letting plays develop. That composure didn't just inspire the offense, it ignited the fans. Every completion, every scramble, every decision seemed to add fuel to a growing fire. It wasn't just the numbers, though they were impressive enough: 14 completions on 23 attempts, 138 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and nearly 20 rushing yards with first downs mixed in. It was the way he did it. Sanders played like someone who understood the stage he was on and embraced it fully. He didn't settle for safe throws or timid checkdowns. He attacked the defense with conviction, throwing darts to the sidelines, threading passes between defenders, and using his legs to extend plays when needed. The Panthers' secondary looked rattled at times, unsure how to contain him, as if every snap could turn into another highlight clip. By the time the first half ended, it was more than excitement, it was belief. The crowd wasn't just impressed, they were convinced they were watching the Browns' future unfold in real time. The stadium buzzed like a playoff atmosphere, and on social media, Sanders' name dominated every trending topic. Fans and analysts alike were calling this the most electrifying preseason debut they'd ever seen. In a league where attention is split across multiple games and storylines, Sanders had managed to turn this one into a nationwide event. The most remarkable part was how natural it all seemed to him. He walked to the line of scrimmage with a quiet confidence, surveyed the defense like he'd done it for years, and made adjustments without hesitation. When Carolina brought heavy blitzes, he sidestepped the rush effortlessly, buying just enough time to deliver perfectly timed passes downfield. Every throw seemed intentional, every read deliberate. There was no panic, no fluster, just a steady command that made it hard to believe this was his very first NFL game. One of the defining moments came early, when Sanders unleashed a 40-yard strike to the sideline that froze the cornerback in place. The throw was so quick and precise that it seemed to catch everyone off guard. Later, rolling out under pressure, he fired another pinpoint pass that left the defense stunned. These weren't cautious plays designed to protect a young quarterback. They were bold, decisive, and executed with the kind of skill that made you wonder how so many teams passed on him in the draft. By halftime, the energy had shifted entirely. Fans who had come expecting a typical preseason tune-up were now witnessing something special. The Browns' offense, often sluggish in recent years, looked sharper than it had in a long time. Receivers were running crisp routes, making contested catches, and playing with a level of urgency that suggested they knew every target mattered. The offensive line gave Sanders time to operate, and when they didn't, his quick footwork and awareness turned potential sacks into positive gains. What stood out even more than the stats was the swagger. Sanders didn't just run the plays, he owned the moment. His body language told the story of a player in complete control, one who was not intimidated by the speed or complexity of the NFL game. The Panthers tried everything: coverages, man-to-man, delayed blitzes, but nothing seemed to throw him off rhythm. Each defensive wrinkle was met with a calm adjustment and a throw that punished the coverage. The second half was when the showmanship fully took over. With the Browns nursing a slim lead in the fourth quarter, Sanders executed a fake handoff so convincing that half the Panthers' defense chased the wrong direction. Rolling out into open space, He launched a deep pass that hung in the air just long enough for the crowd to collectively hold its breath. When it landed perfectly in his receiver's hands for a touchdown, the stadium erupted. It was the kind of play that instantly gets replayed on every sports highlight show and becomes a signature moment for a young quarterback. From there, the game's outcome felt inevitable, but Sanders kept the pressure on. He finished with a stat line that would be impressive for any quarterback, let alone one making his debut: multiple touchdowns, no turnovers, and efficiency that suggested a deep understanding of the offense. But beyond the numbers, he had something more valuable: the complete buy-in of his teammates and the city. Players were rallying around him, coaches were trusting him with more complex reads, and fans were already imagining what the season could become with him at the helm. By the final whistle, it was clear this wasn't just a good performance, it was a statement. Sanders had shown the Browns, the NFL, and the fans exactly what he was capable of, and in doing so, he'd raised expectations across the board. Viewership numbers reflected the buzz. People who normally didn't care about preseason games had tuned in and stayed glued to their screens. Sports bars were packed, living rooms were full, and even casual fans were suddenly talking about Cleveland's new quarterback. This debut felt like more than the start of a career, it felt like the birth of a new chapter for the Browns. The offense had a spark it hadn't shown in years, the fan base had a reason to believe again, and the league had a new storyline to follow closely. Sanders' blend of poise, talent, and confidence was rare, and it was already making an impact. Other teams were undoubtedly taking notice, wondering how to game plan for a rookie who played like a veteran and commanded the spotlight so effortlessly. Even after the game, the excitement didn't fade. Analysts debated how high his ceiling could be, former players praised his readiness, and fans flooded social media with predictions of playoff runs and long-term success. For Cleveland, a city that had been starved for sustained football success, Sanders represented hope. And not just hope in the abstract hope grounded in real, tangible performance that could be built upon week after week. One game in, and the narrative around the Browns had shifted entirely. They were no longer just another team filling out the schedule. With Sanders at quarterback, they were must-watch football. Whether this momentum would carry into the regular season remained to be seen, but if his debut was any indication, Cleveland had found a leader capable of changing the franchise's trajectory. And for the rest of the NFL, that meant one thing: get ready. The second half of Shadur Sanders' debut felt less like a preseason trial run and more like a polished showcase. Whatever nerves might have been there in the opening series were long gone, replaced by a rhythm that made the game flow almost effortlessly. He walked back onto the field with a calmness that was impossible to miss, glancing around like a man surveying territory he'd already claimed. The crowd's energy, already high, seemed to double. Fans weren't just cheering anymore, they were on edge, waiting for the next flash of brilliance. The Panthers' defense tried to adjust, mixing their coverage and disguising blitzes, but Sanders kept reading them cleanly. His timing with the receivers seemed almost telepathic, with passes arriving the moment they came out of their breaks. Short slants turned into chunk gains. Sideline throws were placed exactly where only his target could get them, and every third down situation felt like a setup for something memorable. At one point, he dropped back under heavy pressure, shifted in the pocket to buy a fraction of a second, and rifled a ball into a tight window for a crucial first down. Plays like that don't just move the chains, they demoralize a defense. The Browns' offense, which had spent too many recent seasons stuck in low gear, was suddenly operating with speed and purpose. Routes were crisp, blocking assignments were sharp, and every player seemed to sense they were part of something special. Even the running backs were hitting holes harder, clearly benefiting from a passing game that was forcing defenders to hesitate. The entire unit looked transformed, as if Sanders' presence alone had elevated their performance. By the middle of the third quarter, the crowd noise was almost constant. Every snap carried the possibility of a big moment, and Sanders delivered often enough to keep the anticipation alive. One particular drive stood out. Starting deep in their own territory, he methodically moved the offense down the field with a mix of quick strikes and patient reads. Then near midfield, he faked a short pass, drew in the linebackers, and launched a deep ball that dropped perfectly into the arms of his receiver in stride. The roar from the stands was deafening. The impact wasn't limited to the scoreboard or the stat sheet. You could feel a shift in how the Browns were being perceived, Not just in the stadium, but in the way the game was being covered. Television crews kept their cameras trained on him even between plays, capturing every expression, every sideline conversation. Commentators marveled at his poise, and highlight producers were already queuing up clips for post-game shows. Social media timelines were flooded with replays and slow-motion breakdowns of his best throws, with fans from other teams admitting they couldn't look away. Then came the moment that would define the night. With the game still within reach for Carolina, the Browns faced a critical fourth-quarter possession. Sanders stepped to the line, recognized the defensive setup, and audibled into a play that immediately had the Panthers scrambling. The snap came, and in one smooth motion, he executed a fake handoff that completely fooled the defense. Rolling to his right, he spotted his receiver breaking free down the sideline and let the ball fly. It seemed to hang in the air just long enough for everyone to hold their breath, and when it landed perfectly for the touchdown, the stadium went wild. It wasn't just a score, it was a statement that this game was over, and the Browns were leaving with a win. From that point on, the Panthers' defense looked defeated. Every attempt to pressure Sanders was met with quick releases or subtle escapes from the pocket. Even when plays broke down, he found ways to make something positive happen. He wasn't just running the offense, he was dictating the pace of the game, forcing Carolina to react rather than initiate. When the final whistle blew, his stat line looked like something out of a dream for a first-year quarterback. Multiple touchdowns, over 300 yards passing, 0 turnovers, and a passer rating that would turn heads in any locker room. But the bigger story was what couldn't be captured in numbers: the way he had commanded the field, inspired his teammates, and electrified a fan base that had been waiting for a performance like this for years. In the post-game atmosphere, you could feel the shift in the city's mood. This wasn't just optimism, it was conviction. People were already talking about the season ahead with a different tone, using words like contender and playoffs with a seriousness that had been missing for far too long. Teammates spoke about him with genuine admiration, noting his preparation, his leadership, and his ability to make everyone around him better. Coaches praised his decision-making, saying it felt like he had been in the system for years instead of weeks. Even the national media, which often treats the Browns as a side note, couldn't ignore what had happened. Primetime sports shows dedicated long segments to his debut, debating how high his ceiling could be and whether this was the start of something truly special. Fans in other cities were already circling their team's matchup with Cleveland, eager to see him play in person. For the NFL, it was the kind of storyline that sells tickets, boosts ratings, and creates lasting memories. And yet, amid all the noise, Sanders remained composed. He smiled during interviews, spoke confidently about the team's effort, and made it clear that his focus was on getting better with each game. There was no arrogance, just a quiet certainty that this was only the beginning. That calm self-assurance might have been the most telling thing of all. It suggested that for him, nights like this weren't surprises, but expectations. Cleveland has seen its share of hopeful starts before, but this one felt different. This wasn't about luck or a single hot streak. It was about a player with the talent, the mindset, and the presence to lead. The city had been waiting for a quarterback who could change the conversation, and in one night, Sanders had done exactly that. If the rest of the league wasn't paying attention before, they are now. Every defensive coordinator will be studying this tape, trying to find weaknesses, but what they'll see is a quarterback who doesn't flinch under pressure, who reads the game with precision, and who has the physical tools to make throws most players wouldn't even attempt. And as the schedule moves forward, every Browns game will feel bigger, every snap carrying the weight of possibility. This was more than just a debut. It was a warning. The Browns, long overlooked, suddenly have a leader capable of rewriting their future. And for the first time in a long time, Cleveland fans don't just have hope, they have a reason to believe. By the time the lights dimmed over the stadium and the last fans reluctantly made their way to the exits, the feeling in the air was unlike anything Cleveland had experienced in years. It wasn't just that the Browns had won a preseason game, it was the way they had done it, the way one player had completely shifted the energy of an entire franchise in a matter of hours. Shadur Sanders had come in and turned what should have been a quiet August matchup into the kind of performance people would talk about all season. The buzz didn't fade overnight. By the next morning, clips of his throws were playing on loop across every sports network. Analysts broke down his footwork, his timing, the subtle way he manipulated defenders with his eyes. They slowed down the replays to show how he released the ball a fraction of a second before the receiver made his cut, how he rolled away from pressure without losing vision downfield, and how every decision seemed to be made with the confidence of someone who'd been in the league for years. It was the kind of technical precision that doesn't usually come with a rookie's first game, and it wasn't going unnoticed. Sanders. Cleveland's local sports radio was swamped with callers who could barely contain their excitement. Lifelong fans who had spent decades weathering heartbreak were suddenly talking about division titles and postseason runs. One caller summed up the mood perfectly. "I don't care if it was preseason. We've been starving for something like this. That kid plays like the future." Even the locker room told a story. Players who normally kept to themselves were visibly animated. Receivers raved about the ball placement. Linemen talked about how much easier it was to block for someone who made quick, decisive reads. And defensive players admitted they felt more energized just knowing the offense could score in bunches. You could see it in their body language. This wasn't just another quarterback joining the roster. This was someone they believed in. The organization itself seemed to shift gears overnight. Team executives knew they had something special on their hands. From marketing to game day planning, everything was now going to revolve around building on this momentum. There was already talk of flexing future games into primetime slots, and ticket sales for the regular season spiked within hours of the final whistle. For a team used to empty seats late in the season, this was uncharted territory. And it wasn't just Cleveland taking notice. Around the league, opposing players and coaches were making quiet mental notes. Defensive coordinators, who had been expecting an easy assignment in facing a rookie, were now rethinking their strategies. They'd seen how Sanders could punish even the smallest mistake, how he could turn a broken play into a gain, and how he could control the tempo of a game from the very first series. No one was going to underestimate him again. The fans, though, were already dreaming bigger. In sports bars across the city, people were replaying his best throws on their phones, debating which one would end up as the most memorable. There was the deep sideline strike that looked impossible until it was caught in stride. There was the perfectly timed rollout pass that beat the blitz by a split second. And of course, there was the fake handoff in the fourth quarter that completely froze the defense and ended with a touchdown that sent the stadium into chaos. Each one felt like a glimpse of what could become a weekly occurrence. The beauty of Sanders' performance wasn't just in the flashy highlights, it was in the way he carried himself through every snap. He never looked rattled, never rushed, and never let the moment overwhelm him. Whether it was 1st and 10 at midfield or 3rd and long deep in their own territory, he approached each play with the same steady demeanor. That level of composure is rare, and when it shows up this early in a career, it can change the trajectory of an entire franchise. By the time the post-game interviews aired, the tone was set. Reporters asked the usual questions, but their smiles gave away the fact that they knew they'd just seen something remarkable. Sanders' responses were measured, respectful, and confident without being cocky. He praised his teammates, gave credit to his coaches, and spoke about the importance of preparation. But there was also an underlying certainty in his words, a quiet acknowledgement that this was just the start. The city of Cleveland has had its share of false dawns in football. Big names have come and gone, promising change, but leaving fans with the same old frustrations. This felt different. It felt sustainable. It felt like the kind of debut that could anchor a decade of success if handled right. And that's why the excitement wasn't just about one game, it was about everything that could come next. As the night gave way to the next day's headlines, one thing was clear. Shadur Sanders had done more than play well in his first NFL appearance. He had changed the conversation entirely. The Browns were no longer a team to overlook. Every game from this point forward would be watched more closely. Every defensive scheme against them would be drawn with him in mind. And every fan in the city would carry a little more pride into each Sunday. And somewhere deep down, even the most skeptical football watchers knew it. This wasn't a fluke. It wasn't beginner's luck or a one-time spark. It was the arrival of a quarterback who had the tools, the mentality, and the presence to take over games. The league had been put on notice, and Cleveland, for the first time in a long time, had a reason to believe that the best was yet to come.